The year is 1220. 40 million people are already dead. The Mongol war machine has crushed everything in its path from China to Eastern Europe. The unstoppable force tore through cities and empires. But what history books don't tell you is how close humanity came to complete civilizational collapse. Kiev, reduced from 50,000 inhabitants to 200 houses. Baghdad's House of Wisdom, 3 million books thrown into the Tigris River, turning it black with ink. This wasn't just conquest. It was systematic erasure of human civilization, and the storm was still gathering strength. Everything seemed destined for ruin. But in the East, another story was about to be written. A line would be drawn that changed the course of history. This was where the last shield would form. What follows is the story of those who stood between total collapse and survival. Standing in the Mongols' path, the Delhi Sultanate, ruled by Turkic Muslims. They had perfected the art of defensive warfare. Preparation and design mattered. Sultan Alauddin Khilji had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, creating mobile cavalry, revolutionary supply systems, and fortifications designed to break Mongol tactics, a new doctrine of defense. 7 times the Mongols invaded India. 7 times they were repelled by Muslim forces. At the Battle of Ravi, Khilji's innovations shattered a 200,000-strong Mongol army. The unstoppable force had met its immovable object, a turning point in a war of attrition. Those defenses held. While armies clashed, other forces began to transform the nature of conquest itself. To the west, conversion, diplomacy, and unexpected choices would turn destroyers into builders. But something even more remarkable was happening in the west. Bert Khan of the Golden Horde was listening to Sufi teachers.
Islam is not conquest, the Sufi explained. It is synthesis.
Within a decade, the destroyers were becoming builders. Trade, law, and faith began to reshape power. New institutions took root. Meanwhile, in secret chambers of the Vatican and Constantinople, Christian leaders were plotting to use Mongol thirst for war to destroy the fledgling Mongol church by pitting it against the Vatican's Muslim rivals.
Better they destroy Baghdad and exhaust themselves against Islam, whispered the conspirators. 2 birds, 1 stone.
Imagine if the Muslims had failed. If Delhi fell in 1296, leaving 200 million Indians defenseless. Without Islamic resistance tying down Mongol armies, unified forces would have swept through Europe. The death toll could have reached 150 million, nearly 20% of the global population. History nearly tilted toward collapse. But another front was at stake: knowledge itself. The Islamic world wasn't just defending territory, it was preserving the accumulated knowledge of humanity. Aristotle, Galen, Ptolemy, all preserved and transmitted. Without them, there would have been no Renaissance, no scientific revolution. What was saved mattered to the future of humanity. In 1260, at Anjalut, Turkic Mamluk warriors achieved the impossible. The first major defeat of a Mongol army at the height of their power. Coordinated tactics turned momentum. The message rang across the known world. The Mongols could be stopped, resistance was possible, and strategies spread. Those victories shaped the next centuries. Over time, new polities grew, and with them, new ideas. By the early modern era, another experiment in governance and stewardship emerged. Centuries later, the Ottoman Empire demonstrated another revolutionary concept: environmental consciousness. In 1603, Sultan Ahmed I refused English petroleum extraction rights, warning of irreparable damage to the environment. This was 250 years before European environmental science. For 6 centuries, Islamic civilization served as humanity's structural constraint on unchecked European expansion. Inclusive governance, diverse populations, blended economies. Ottoman strength directly limited extreme wealth concentration and colonial excess. Consider the fact historical data spanning 600 years reveals a striking correlation: the inverse relationship between Ottoman territorial control and European wealth concentration. As Ottoman influence declined from its 17th century peak, European capital accumulation accelerated dramatically, reaching maximum inequality precisely as the empire collapsed into World War I. The numbers don't lie. Someone's loss became someone else's extraordinary gain. Modern Turkish DNA shows uniform diversity. Biological proof that systematic inclusion worked for centuries. Birdhouses built into mosque walls, fountains designed for animals, features of a civilization that understood sustainability. Public architecture served social welfare, education, and ecology in one system. The Ottoman Vakif system provided comprehensive social services centuries before European social democracy. Hospitals, soup kitchens, schools funded by endowments. The millet system achieved centuries of relative religious peace in cities like Jerusalem. The inclusivity of the Ottoman system secured an unprecedented 300 continuous years of peace in the most contested real estate in human history. Finally, Jerusalem lived up to its name as a place of peace and stability. Yet, modern textbooks label this empire with words like decline and sick man of Europe. The systematic erasure is nearly complete. Forgotten achievements gather dust. But the blueprints remain, waiting to be read. In our current global crisis, rising inequality, environmental collapse, religious conflict, the Ottoman model offers forgotten solutions. For over 6 centuries they demonstrated that inclusive, sustainable, equitable civilization was possible. Not idealized but real and profitable. The Turks didn't just defeat the Mongol storm, they transformed it. Destroyers became builders. Threats became opportunities. This transformation may be the most important lesson in human history. The evidence survives in genetic signatures, architectural remains, and institutional memories. These traces point to a civilization systematically erased from historical consciousness. But the blueprints exist. The working models were real. The question isn't whether the Ottoman Empire was perfect or whether the good guys lost World War I. The question is, what would our world look like if we hadn't systematically poisoned and erased a civilization that solved problems we still struggle with? Maybe it's time to learn from the people who turned humanity's greatest destroyer into its greatest builder. The Mongols came as the storm of the century. Islam tamed the storm and the Turks turned them into the builders of the next. In our current moment of global crisis, that lesson might be exactly what humanity needs to remember. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't the ones that destroy enemies, but the ones that transform them into allies. The last stand became the first step in saving civilization as we know it. So next time when they gloat about stopping Osman at the gates of Vienna or cry about Muslims invading Europe, take a minute to remember the unsung heroes as you visualize the wealth disparity chart spanning 600 years of data documenting wealth disparity in Europe. See how the lines cross? Right here, 1914. The Ottomans are finished, and European wealth inequality hits its highest point in recorded history. That right there is not coincidence, that's cause and effect. The sick man was poisoned, and the systematic erasure is the cover-up. Someone got very rich by destroying the true, the good, and the beautiful.